Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we are going to be talking about the newest album from Dustin Lynch, titled Where It's At. But first, let's talk a little bit about labels in country music. Now, like any genre, you got your big labels and you got your independents. But unlike other genres, you don't really have that one independent label that has accumulated tons of critical acclaim, or real powerhouse artists underneath their banner. In other words, country music doesn't seem to have a label like Alt-Indie Rock's Sub Pop Records, or Rap's Top Dog Entertainment, or Pop Rock's Fueled by Ramen, for example. But that's not saying that some indie labels in country don't have power, especially when leaning into mainstream country. Far from it, which takes us to Broken Bow Records. Founded in 1999, he grew up in most prominent in recent years for signing Jason Aldean, Thompson Square, Craig Morgan, and the artist that we're going to be talking about today, Dustin Lynch. Now, Lynch comes as a bit of an odd arrival to mainstream country music, in that he released his debut album in 2012, just before the bro country wave took over and subsequently collapsed. If anything, he seemed to be looking more towards the neo-traditional, smooth, adult contemporary side of country, where you normally find acts like Chris Young or Blake Shelton, especially off of his highest charting single, Cowboys and Angels, which was a pretty solid song that had a bit of lyrical clumsiness, but it made up for it with some really great guitar tones and really solid instrumentation all around. It was enough to get me curious about his follow-up album, Where It's At, which was set to be released this year, albeit with a much less impressive lead-off single. What did concern me about the album was that his number of writing credits had fallen off significantly, from well over half of his self-titled debut to just a third of this album. But then again, he was working with established country songwriters, and one of them was not Dallas Davidson, which could mean good things, including a longtime Dierks Bentley collaborator, Brett Beavers, was working with him. So I figured, what the hell, and I gave it a look. What'd I find? Honestly, I don't know what I was expecting, but I was definitely surprised by this album. And the more I think about it, the less I should have been surprised, because Dustin Lynch and Where It's At isn't all that far removed from your standard bro country record, at least in terms of its lyrical content, but in terms of the presentation of that content, both in terms of some of the songwriting and especially the instrumentation, it feels different enough to elevate this album to something pretty damn close to unique, especially considering you're looking at mainstream country music. But at the same time, though, I'd hesitate to call this record great or even very good all the way through, because while it is different, I'd be cautious to call it really a true success or even a real standout. So you know what? Let's start with the element of this record that's inevitably going to be the most divisive: the instrumentation and the production. To put it mildly, this is a very slick country record. While there are definitely fiddles and steel guitars and even some organ elements that actually do manage to have some texture, this element definitely has more than its fair share of swirling, spacious electronic elements that are definitely an odd fit typically with country instrumentation. Hell, for the song To the Sky, I honestly thought with the guitar tones and the production, I grabbed the wrong record and was somehow listening to a Poets of the Fall album. But then I remembered that I love Poets of the Fall, and the instrumentation managed to click with me phenomenally well, and it's easy to see why. It's got a strong melodic focus, the electronic elements are downplayed and used only to subtly accentuate the atmosphere, and the production, while very polished, never comes across as incredibly synthetic or downplaying that organic sound. What also helps matters is that the guitar tones are light enough to balance well against the keyboards, and drum machines rarely crop up, if ever, which gives the album a lot of loose, breezy energy, which is damn near perfect for a collection of pretty lightweight party tracks. And from To the Sky to the prominent strumming is the bouncy percussion on Halo, to the organ supporting the verses on Where We Want It, to the classy elegance of the strings or She Wants a Cowboy, to the earnest pianos in Middle of Nowhere, down to the stripped back guitars of Your Daddy's Boots. There are points, I'll admit, that the production gets a little bit too slick. I like Sing It To Me, but it's even a little bit too synthetic even for my taste, especially in the vocal production. But more often than not, the electronic elements on this album feel cohesive in crafting a lightweight sound that manages to work and feels earnest in a decidedly pop country vein. That worked for me. And you know what? That's probably how I would describe Dustin Lynch to himself as a singer-performer. I would not call him a tremendous talent behind the microphone. He could probably do to push himself a little bit harder on some songs, which often doesn't happen given the subject matter, but he never really sounds sleazy or like a douchebag, and some of the multi-track harmonies that he puts together are actually pretty well composed. I did mention before that the vocal production is not stellar. The auto-tune can be a little bit obvious, and that should never ever be the case in country music, but he's got an earnest amount of charm that definitely does work for his favor, so it's ultimately a plus in my books. And that takes us to lyrics and themes of this album, and where this album really could have done better, or at least done more. Now, don't get me wrong, from a songwriting standpoint, most of the lyrics have a good, easygoing flow to them that prevents them from being really too unlikable, and there are very few songs in this album that aggressively manage to annoy me or piss me off. I mean, the hook of the title track, that can get a little bit annoying, and Mind Reader contains just as many of the bad pickup lines that Dustin Lynch later tries to brush off on What You Want to Hear, another bro country pickup track that tries to show more cleverness than it really does have. But okay, let's be honest here. The majority of this album lives and dies by the bro country hookup party playbook and all of the cliches that come with it. And a full 2/3 of this album falls straight into that territory. That's not bad in principle. I like the gentle challenge of Halo and the bemused confusion of Middle of Nowhere. And you know what? There are solid enough melodies that make After Party right where we want it and Singing to Me passable enough bro country tracks that I can still enjoy, if I'm being honest. But I'd be lying if I hadn't said that I had heard every single one of these songs lyrically all before. But even the songs venturing outside of the typical bro country template, they aren't exactly original or material that I haven't heard before either. She Wants a Cowboy is a song where the girl forsakes the city glam for the country. Gee, haven't heard that before in country music. And American Prayer and World to Me are songs pandering to country lifestyles and God and family and prayer and in ways that I feel have been done to death over the past decade. Now, I'm not saying that these songs are bad. Objectively, I can't say they are, but they suffer from a broad lack of originality in their storytelling and their presentation, albeit with some admittedly solid melodies behind them. The one album standout that does provide some relatively interesting content is Your Daddy's Boots, where he's at his wedding and watching his new wife dance with her father-in-law, and wondering how he can fill that role of being the most important guy in this girl's life going forward. It definitely helps that Dustin Lynch has the real sincerity and earnestness in order to back that track up, and it really works for me. But look, overall, we're dealing with a collection of pretty lightweight bro country tracks, admittedly presented pretty well and with some production and interesting melodies behind them. I'm gonna admit that, but nothing all that substantial or really all that potent. And if this was Dustin Lynch's goal, well, I honestly can't deny that he didn't do a reasonably good job here in crafting at least a unique brand of bro country in terms of the instrumental sound. But that being said, I can't help but feel that if Lynch had a little bit more writing credits and was able to push his creative muscles a little bit further, we could have gotten some truly great subject material out of here and back up some of the more interesting production on this record. And it could have had a little bit more impact and at least been a little bit more worth remembering. As it is, I'm thinking a very, very strong 6 out of 10, and a decent recommendation is appropriate if you're looking for bro country with a little bit more flavor, but a lot more of the same substance. Let's just hope that Dustin Lynch pushes his songwriting a little bit further going forward. But otherwise, check this out. It's worth it. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. If there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.